English by the Nature Method, Chapter 39, the 39th chapter, An English House. When dinner was over, Mr. Edwards offered to show his guests the house. "You haven't seen the inside of an English home, have you?" he asked them. "Perhaps it might interest you to see ours. It's a little larger than what we might call the typical English house. The typical English house, I should say, has 5 rooms. 4/5 of all the small houses that you have seen on your trips about London have been of that type. And it's not only in London that this type is common, but all over England. Now, we have 3 rooms on the ground floor. You have seen 2 of them, and I will show you the study. Now," he added, opening the door to his study, "this is my room, where I can have my books and papers in peace. The maid comes in here about once a week to clean the room, and on that day I can never find any of my things. She has been here today, I think, for I can't see my cigars anywhere. Well, they must be somewhere, so I will see if I can find them." He looked round the room, found the box of cigars at last on one of the bookshelves, and then offered one to each of his guests. "These armchairs in front of the fireplace look very comfortable," said Wood, and Mr. Edwards replied, "Yes, they are very nice to sit in. I have tried to make my house as comfortable as possible, for it's so nice when you come home after a long day's work to sit in a big, comfortable chair, reading the paper or a good book. But come along and see the other rooms of the house. The kitchen, where the food is cooked, is not very interesting to men. It's here at the back of the house, but next to the kitchen is a small room which is typical of an English house. It's called the scullery, and it's used for the washing up and for the dirty part of the cooking, such as cleaning potatoes and vegetables." After having shown them the ground floor, Mr. Edwards took them upstairs to the first floor. Upstairs we have all the bedrooms and the bathroom. This big one's our own room. Here is one for the maid, and this is my daughter's room. She is not at home tonight. These young people are never at home. She has gone out with some friends to see a picture. That room used to be my son's, but he is now married to the daughter of an old friend of mine and has his own home. It's nice to have an extra room. Since my son married 2 years ago, we have often used the room for guests. Well, shall we go downstairs again? I think you have seen all there is to be seen upstairs and downstairs now. Perhaps you would like to see the garden too. You know that, like most Englishmen, I love my garden. I love to work in it in the evening after sitting in the office most of the day. On Sunday mornings, I get a lot of work done in the garden. I'm hardly ever ill, and I think it is my love of garden work that does this. Work like this is necessary for a business man to keep him well. I'm especially interested in roses. Over here, on the south side of the house and along the garden wall, I have my rose bushes. Aren't they beauties? You see that we have a big lawn. Most English people like to have a piece of ground with grass in their gardens. As you can see, the lawn goes right up to the house, so that looking out of the windows, we almost feel that we are in the garden. The lawns of many large old English country houses are famous all over the world. These old lawns are so famous and well known that when people want to say that a lawn is really beautiful, they say it's a real English lawn. Some of them are several hundred years old. At the back of the garden are my fruit trees, and we also have a small kitchen garden with a few vegetables. It isn't of very much use to us, but I get lots of fun out of working in it. On their way back to the house, Mr. Edwards showed them the garage, and opened the door so that they might see his car. It was a beauty, and quite new. "It's a small Morris," he said. "I think you know Morris cars in your country too. It's quite famous in other countries for its low price and for being cheap to run. I have had other cars before, larger ones, but now that we are only 3, this one is big enough, and nowadays cheapness is something one must think of too. It runs many miles for a few shillings." There was a door from the garage into the hall, and they returned to the house by this door. Miss Edwards had now returned and was introduced to the guests by her father, who said, "This is my daughter, Marian. Marian, this is Mr. Miller, who is staying in England with his pupils, Mr. Storm, Mr. Wood, and Mr. Brown." Miss Edwards was a lovely young girl, a typical English beauty, with a rosy face, blue eyes, and brown wavy hair. They sat for some hours talking in front of the fire in the study. Mr. Edwards was able to tell them about many interesting things in London, which he said they must see before leaving, and when at last it was time for them to take their leave, they all thanked Mr. and Mrs. Edwards as well as Mr. and Miss Edwards for the pleasant evening they had spent in their home. They said that they would never forget the kindness that had been shown them when they came as strangers to their home, and they added that they would write them a letter when they got back to their own country.